Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Income is the Outcome, where we believe it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and I'm joined in the studio by Tim Whistler. He is the founder and president of the Whistler Agency. We're so glad you're joining us today. We've got an important conversation we are going to be having around the smart money path for Millennials and Gen Z. Now, here's the deal. Even if you yourself are not part of that generation, guess what? This conversation affects all generations because chances are you have members in your family that you might want to be passing on money to who are in those generations. So this is going to be a really fun and informative conversation. Tim, my friend, great to be here with you. How are you this week?
I'm well, Kristen. It's always great to be back in the studio with you again today as well.
Well, thank you. Well, we were talking as we were preparing for today's show. We did a show several weeks ago on the Great Wealth Transfer.
Yep.
So we need to recap that concept as we set up the context for today's conversation. So can you share with our viewers what this Great Wealth Transfer is?
So it's that estimate that they're talking about where the baby boomers continue to retire and then ultimately pass away. The amount of assets are going to be passed on from their generation to the upcoming generations. They're estimating that number to be somewhere around 84 trillion with a T dollars over the next upcoming decades.
Yes.
It's going to be massive.
That is massive. $84 trillion with a T. And you know, it's interesting. It's going to affect different generations in different ways, right?
Right. It sure will. It's basically going to impact nearly everybody because chances are, I mean, obviously, as we've talked before, the ideal retirement income plan is if we knew the dates of two events. When the stock market's going to correct and the day we're going to pass away. We'd probably be talking about something completely different because the ultimate retirement plan would be to exhaust the account after we pass away and maybe leave some legacy dollars. But since we don't know that, it's going to affect families. It's going to impact, like you said in the intro, it's going to impact every generation that we're talking about right now because that dollar's going to come across, and when it comes across, we want to understand what does that mean for the current generation and what's it going to mean for the beneficiary generation when those dollars come into their asset portfolios.
Right. And there's lots of things to consider whether you are the one passing on the wealth or you're going to be the one inheriting that wealth. And we're going to get into these implications of the Great Wealth Transfer. Let's just define generations, though, because I know that there's some debate out there about who falls into what category, right?
There actually is, yes, and I love it. So again, the baby boomers were born between 1946 and 64. Easy one to remember. Then Gen X, our generation.
Yes, the greatest. No, I'm just
absolutely,
kidding.
Biased. 65 to 1980, right? Then the millennials were between 1981 and 1996, and then the Gen Zs were between 1997 and 2012.
Yes. So, and it's crazy because I think about nieces and nephews in my family that fall into Millennial and Gen Z. And there's a certain point where you're like, wait, people were born after the year I was born, right?
That can't be true.
I know, it's crazy. But we're going to get into these implications for what this means depending on where you might fall in that generational spectrum. But from your point of view, Tim, what is it about the Great Wealth Transfer that matters so much?
You know, I think that they're going to experience something that's going to be out of the ordinary. Is really what it boils down to. Because if you think about, you know, the upcoming generations, Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, right now they're working, saving, sacrificing, building up your own retirement income plan. Then all of a sudden, tragically speaking, mom or dad have passed away. Now here comes assets into our portfolio. That's a different world that they now reside in because now we're going from, well, we're still building wealth according to how much we can save and put away and contribute to a 401k and contribute to a Roth, whatever we're doing. But all of a sudden, here comes a bucket of money. And that bucket of money now is all of a sudden, okay, it comes with some responsibilities.
Right.
Because, okay, number one, how are those dollars taxed? If they were pre-tax dollars in a traditional IRA, were mom or dad taking the RMDs accordingly? How long do we need to exhaust these assets? I mean, so it's just a different world that we're not familiar with. And I think it's very, very important because this is an emotional event.
Yes, yeah.
Mom or dad have now passed. Now here comes some dollars. So these assets are very emotional to us. They mean a great deal to us because it's the legacy mom and dad left behind for us. We really want to treasure these dollars and leverage them in the best interest. And certainly we want to inherit those dollars with strategy and with the right individuals who understand how this will work and how it can benefit you with the strategy. How do we implement that into our overall retirement income plan.
For sure. And then we have challenges such as legislative risk. And there's been so much change in legislation in just the last 5 years alone.
Yep.
So we need to talk about that. Talk about some of these recent changes and how that can impact this great wealth transfer, these retirement accounts, this money that's going to be passing on down the generations.
So when the Secure Act was passed back in 2019, and it became effective in 2020, the primary benefit of that one was they changed the RMD age from 70 and a half. Again, who comes up with half, but whatever.
Right.
They changed it to 72. And then when the Secure Act 2.0 came out, then they said, okay, based upon your year of birth, 1951 to 1959, your RMD age is now 73, and 1960 and later, it's 75. That was major legislation. Well, also what did not really get a lot of press was the fact that when they changed the RMD ages, for all of you out there, they also did away with what's called the stretch IRA. That completely changes now how when somebody inherits a non-spouse beneficiary, when you as a non-spouse beneficiary inherit dollars, you now have to have those dollars completely exhausted within a period of time because you can't stretch those distributions out over your lifetime. That was major legislation.
Yep.
And then just here recently, here in 2025, we had the One Big Beautiful Bill that was just passed. And you know, the highlight of that one, and we're still unpacking the details from that. It was, you know,
Sure.
I downloaded the PDF and made an attempt to, you know, pick out some of the highlights.
Right.
But I mean, there's a lot of information there. But
Yes.
you know, he extended the current tax brackets because we've been talking on the show that at the end of 2025 they're going to sunset. Well, using the verbiage from Congress, these current tax brackets have been extended and they're permanent. Okay, well, let's define permanent in Congress because I dare you to find a Sharpie in Washington, D.C.
Right. Yeah.
What resides is pencil and eraser. So it's basically permanent until they change their minds. So there's legislative risk, like you said, Kristen, always involved, and we have to be aware, we want to be aware of how those rules and laws impact the dollars as they transfer from mom and dad to the kids.
For sure. That was so well said, Tim. And if I may, I want to dig in a little deeper onto those changes just to help our viewers understand why this is so impactful. So I've heard people say, oh, how nice of them. They extended the RMD age. They delayed it, right? That wasn't in our best interest. That was in the government's best interest. And here's why. They know that the longer that tax-deferred money sits in those accounts, the more it's going to grow, which means the later that you wait to pull money out of that account, they're going to get a bigger chunk in the form of taxes, right?
Exactly right.
So that was the first thing. Then eliminating the stretch IRA provision. So now let's say a child inherits a large sum of money from their parents. They now have to liquidate that entire account within the first 10 years, whether they need the money or not, and they're going to have to pay tax on it. The government knows that most folks inheriting that kind of wealth are going to be in their highest earning years, which means if you're already up here in tax brackets, now you've inherited a large lump sum of money. Guess what? Again, the government wins. More of your money is going to them in the form of taxes. And so this is why we have to get in front of this and plan for it, because we want people to keep their hard-earned money and not pay any more to the IRS than they are legally required to pay.
That's right. I mean, when we go into retirement, we already know there's going to be market cycles and there's going to be legislative risk.
Yep.
But Kristen said it so well. We want to stay ahead of it, and that is the point of having a conversation with us. It's complimentary. The ultimate result of the conversation can be you walking out of the office with a written financial plan that includes dollars that may be coming to you as an inheritance. And just like Kristen said, the IRS did not do us any favors with this legislation. It's all about their tax revenue because they know there's $84 trillion that are going to go from mom and dad to the kids, and we want to help you keep as much of that as we can. So therefore, let's have the conversation. Let's sit down, let's unpack the details, let's talk about what retirement means to you, and how do we properly leverage those assets, whether they're your own assets that you're currently building or the assets you're going to inherit from mom and dad. Let's talk about that and create the tax-efficient retirement income plan.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. I know we've got so much more to get to, but that was a wonderful intro, and we're so glad that you're here with us for that conversation. If this is resonating with you, if you know that you need to have a plan in place so that, like Tim said, you can get in front of all of this, we encourage you to reach out. This is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how T and the team of Tim, the Whistler Agency, let me get this out, how Tim and the team of the Whistler Agency can help and serve you. That number to call is 888-992-7829, or if you'd rather connect online, simply scan that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and that will get you connected as well. When we come back, What is known as the three-legged stool and why is it disappearing? And most importantly, what does that mean for future generations? Stay with us to find out right after this.
When you start hearing more stories about their grandkids or the birth of another grandchild, to now they start sharing stories about how they're taking care of mom or dad, you start to become part of their family. The relationship kind of builds naturally. We meet on a regular basis. They've got my cell phone number. They can email me. They can text me if there's anything comes to mind. Or whatever the case is, you start to you continue to build that relationship. And what a joy that is whenever somebody calls in and asks, how are you doing? How's Rhonda doing? You become part of a family together, and it becomes very, very, very personable. And every day, get to go to my office and sit down and just look at my clients' databases. I can see who's having birthdays today, and then for them to kind of share with you the joy of having that plan, the joy of having that advisor, that counselor that'll walk right alongside of them through all the years into retirement. I just want to make sure as the years unfold that we just continue to build on the growth and just kind of keep the practice running on solid ground and continue to provide service to clients.
As individuals, we strive for better, from a better house, to a better career, to a better life for our kids. But when it comes time to your retirement, what does better mean to you? More income, a flexible lifestyle, better solutions. A better retirement begins with a plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome. I'm Kristen Oakley here with Tim Whistler from the Whistler Agency, and we're so glad you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, Tim and I have been talking a lot today about the great wealth transfer. We've done previous episodes on this. The fact that $84 trillion is expected to pass from the baby boomer generation on down. Of course, this creates implications for those who are going to be passing on the wealth and for those of you who might be inheriting it. We're going to be continuing our conversation, really focusing on Millennials and Gen Z. We know that you yourself might not be a part of that generation. We're Generation X, right? But we all have people in our family that this is going to impact. And so it really is an intergenerational conversation. Before we dive back in, I know I want to ask you about this three-legged stool and why it's disappearing. But we were talking during the break, and I know there's some fabulous research that you wanted to share with our viewers that's really applicable.
You know, it really boils down to the value of having a plan. And so this study was just released not too long ago, a global study by HSBC, very, very popular entity, and the Wellbeing Research Center at Oxford University. I think there's some credibility there.
For sure.
The study duration was in March of 2024. There was 11,230 participants between 25 and 69 years of age. The wealth bracket was between 100,000 and 2 million in investable assets across 11 global markets.
Okay. Wow, yeah.
So we're talking people.
Yep.
The end of the result basically said those who had no formal plan at all were about 60% satisfied of what's going on. Those who had some type of a structure were about 80% satisfied, but those who actually had a written holistic plan, 90% satisfaction. So if that kind of drives home the point of you taking the time, making the investment of time to sit down, let's talk through it. There's the numbers right there. 11,000 people across 11 global markets said when we have a holistic written plan, chances are we'll be very, very satisfied with the results because it'll keep you within the guardrails of what retirement looks like for you.
Right, and keep you on track. And this is so important. This is a perfect segue because something known as the three-legged stool no longer exists. So explain what that is and why these newer generations aren't going to be able to benefit from it.
You know, back when mom and dad were working, baby boomers were working, there was a three-legged stool, and they talked about how your retirement sits on the three legs of a stool. And those legs were financial legs: Social Security, pension, and your savings, right? So let's break these legs down. What are pensions doing right now? They're slowly fading away. That leg has become very, very weak. Now all of a sudden, that leg is not going to keep that stool upright anymore. Social Security. They keep talking about Social Security. Okay, we don't want to create any type of fear, but they're talking about they're going to have to look at benefit payouts in the near future. What does that look like? So now you're down to that last final leg, your retirement savings. This is why we talk about as we transition from one generation to the next, the way we invest, the way we save also has to be possibly reflected, reviewed, updated. because legislative risk is always involved. It's always changing some things. So we can't invest and save the same way mom and dad did. That's why I think today's show hopefully will resonate with some folks to help them understand, here's some options we want to think about, because now your retirement savings leg becomes very critical for your retirement.
Right, because now the burden rests on you, right? It's up to
Right.
you to make sure that there's going to be enough money to last you throughout the rest of your life, which can be really daunting if you aren't aware of how to do that well, and have that plan in place. So no wonder folks who have that plan are that much more satisfied,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's clarity. It's just like that whole saying goes, when the vision is clear, the decision is easy. And that's what we're here to help you do. Simplify the process, but give you a very detailed written financial plan.
Awesome. Well, going back to specifically for Gen Z, for millennials, what are the tools? So the three-legged stool is not going to work for this generation, right? For these future generations. So what tools are available that they should specifically be focusing on? So
we can break this down, then we'll kind of hit them at the high level and we'll talk about them. So the traditional 401k, obviously very, very popular. If you're out there working, you're employed by a company and they offer you the 401k, by all means, please participate in it. If they offer you a match and your budget allows, please contribute up to the amount that they can match. Right? Then you look at Roth 401ks. They're starting to now gain some popularity. So take advantage of those as well, because at the high level, the difference is, where do you want to save taxes? Do you want to save them year by year by year as you get a tax deduction for contributing to a 401k? Or, big picture, do you want to create a bucket of money that's tax-free and it'll generate income for you in retirement? That's the difference between traditional 401k and Roth 401k. Then also you look at contributing to a Roth IRA. And one of our favorites is the 7702.
Okay, so yeah, I'm excited to dive more into these. Let's talk specifically first about the traditional 401k versus the Roth 401k, the Roth IRA. I know that can be a little hard. It was drilled into me that you always take the tax break today. That was what was drilled into me from the moment I started working. Obviously, there's a trade-off, right? Because if you're not getting the tax break today, but you're building a tax-free pool of money, walk folks through that trade-off and how they should be thinking about it.
In previous episodes, we've talked about that being the tax trap. And Ed Slott himself, if you do your research, go to IRAhelp.com, Ed's website. And again, I have the privilege of being a part of his elite IRA advisor group. And we talk about this all the time.
Well, he's known as America's authority on IRAs and 401ks, right?
He is the man, and he still describes himself as a 40-year recovering CPA. And he says, I wish I could go back in time, and now when I'm sitting down with my clients, helping them prepare their taxes, I should have been helping them approach taxes from the holistic view, not just from one year to the next, so they'll come back in my office next year and ask me to file their taxes again. So when we break down traditional 401k and Roth 401k, yes, you get a tax break in the current year when you contribute to a 401k, okay? Is that the real benefit? Because as we talked about before, when wealth is going to be transferred from one generation to the next, and those dollars are tax deferred, that silent partner known as the IRS is no longer silent, folks. They will take their revenue from you and they'll dictate how much you get to keep. So therefore, if you have those options, it may behoove us to go ahead and let's start setting up that Roth 401k, the Roth IRA, creating that bucket of money for tax-free income. Because really the difference between the two, Kristen, if you have $1 million in a 401k and $1 million in a Roth 401k, it's substantial.
Yes.
It is a huge, huge difference between how much we'll pay in taxes if we defer them versus paying the taxes now and creating a tax-free bucket of money for later.
Because it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep.
Yes,
as we
ma'am.
say each and every week, right?
We do, that's right.
And that's the trade-off for sure, yeah. Well, what if somebody works for a company? Because I know it is becoming a lot more popular that Roth 401ks are available, but not everyone watching may have that option. So what if, because some people are in that hard line where it's like, okay, I earn too much and there's income limits to creating a Roth IRA, right?
Yeah.
To contribute to a Roth IRA, rather, and I don't have a Roth 401k at work. So what would be your advice to that individual?
Those are the folks that we call Henrys. It's an acronym for high earners, not rich yet. So congratulations, you're a Henry, right? So like Kristen said, if we're limited on maybe what the company offers to us, or maybe what the IRS allows us to contribute to, please don't think that that's the end of the story. You have the ability to take advantage of one of the members of the permanent life insurance family called an indexed universal life policy. It's a tax code 7702. At a high level, it's not for everybody. But for those people who are looking at a way of creating a tax-free bucket of money to draw from later on down the road, that IUL is a strong candidate to be considered as part of that plan. Again, if we're restricted, or maybe we've maxed out our contributions. I can think of an IUL I wrote over 10 years ago, back I think it was 2014, 2015. Young guy, mid-20s, single, an accountant for Caterpillar. And I thought, okay, if an accountant sees this, you know there's some significant value. So long story short, that was kind of his plan. He was able to contribute to a Roth IRA at that time. His salary was well within the contribution limits. But he's like, I want to build this thing because I can dictate how much I put into it, and it's not based upon my income.
Right.
So he's been building this thing now for over a decade, and this thing is growing substantially because it's just one of the things where, again, if we have time ahead of us, this is a bucket of money we might want to consider probably utilizing to create some tax-free income later on down the road in retirement.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're talking about this, Tim, because, it's interesting. The stats say that 90% of U.S. senators have this type of life insurance, the 7702 plan. It gets its name from the tax code 7702, right?
Yep.
85% of Congress people have one, and yet most Americans have never heard of it and have no idea that it's available. That's a problem.
It is a problem. And unfortunately, a lot of the press where they talk about it, it's negative. They don't talk about it in a good light, and that's a detriment because if we understood the benefits of having something maybe we've never heard of before, we should be open-minded to let's see how this possibly works.
Yeah.
So I've seen the IUL, Kristen, not only work for a gentleman, a Gen Xer that's building wealth. I've also used it with my current clients as a tax conversion vehicle, converting them out of that forever tax bucket and get it into the never tax bucket. So it's a very versatile tool, and it can be a very, very powerful ally, again, when we're looking at how much tax efficiency can we have in our future income for retirement. For
sure. Well, I know we want to continue this conversation and talk more about tax efficiency as well. What would you say to our viewers watching that maybe this is new information to them for the very first time?
I would say right now, let's go ahead and have the conversation. Let's sit down, let's schedule the conversation, bring in statements, bring in 401k IRA statements, because when we provide you with a written financial plan, we're not only going to show you how you can create the income you need for retirement from the assets that you have, but we're going to provide you with a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. Folks, that's the key. When you start taking withdrawals from assets that have never been taxed, it will probably shock you. So if you also have the opportunity, when you go to our website, you also have the opportunity to take advantage of our retirement tax calculator. So if you go to our website, thewhistleраgency.com, or if you want to go directly to our tax calculator, it's retirementtaxreview.com. It's there on your screen. There's a QR code. Take advantage of these free tools, get the summaries from those results, and let's let that be the conversation starter for your retirement income plan.
For sure. Tim, thank you so much. And I know that once folks visit retirementtaxreview.com, really that's just the first step. That is awareness. That's going to show you what your potential tax bill might be throughout the rest of your life if you do nothing. But the good news is Tim and the team of the Whistler Agency have solutions for you to help you remove the IRS as much as possible. Again, we don't want you paying any more in tax than you are legally required to pay or your heirs in this context of our conversation of passing on wealth today. So we encourage you to visit that site. But again, the real way he's going to be able to help you is by building you that very own complimentary written financial plan. 888-992-7829 is the number to call, or you're welcome to click that QR code and that will get you connected to him as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
Think estate planning mistakes only happen to celebrities? Think again. Prince, Aretha Franklin, and even Ted Williams have all left behind estates without a proper plan, leading to years of legal disputes and financial loss for their families. But these mistakes aren't just for the rich and famous. Without a solid estate plan, your assets could be tied up in probate, subject to high taxes, or even end up in the wrong hands. The good news? These mistakes are avoidable. A well-structured estate plan ensures that your assets go where you intend, with minimal hassle for your loved ones. Have you reviewed your plan recently? Do you know how tax laws impact your estate? Don't let your legacy become another cautionary tale. Did you ever think your own retirement would be shared with our government? It's true. Your traditional 401k, IRA, pension, or similar retirement accounts are in partnership with the IRS. Simply put, they want their tax dollars and you have them. With our latest tax calculator, you can plug in your own number while sitting at home. To find out what your future tax liability might be, scan the QR code or go to retirementtaxreview.com.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome, where today Tim and I have been discussing a way forward for intergenerational conversations regarding passing on wealth. And we want to go back to an important change, again, that cannot be stressed enough. The fact that the stretch IRA provision was eliminated with the Secure Act 2.0. And so now we need to talk about what happens to non-spouse beneficiaries. So let's say mom and dad pass on wealth to their kids. What are the rules and what do those generations need to understand about inheriting that kind of wealth?
So even though it was mom or dad's IRA, the IRS doesn't disappear. And we've said this before, an IRA is an IOU to the IRS. So if mom and dad have now left those dollars to you, and now you as a non-spouse beneficiary inherit them, now you own that IRA, therefore you own the liability of the taxes that comes with owning an IRA account. So the first thing we talk about doing is setting up an inherited IRA account. And then once we have the inherited IRA account set up, now the way we manage that account happens a couple different ways. Number one, the constant is like Kristen said earlier. When you inherit, when a non-spouse beneficiary inherits traditional IRA dollars, by the 10th year, that entire account value has to be zero. That's on you, right? So you have to make sure that we put together a plan to exhaust that strategically as time goes on. But the other wrinkle in this whole thing is how old were mom or dad when they passed away and sent that dollars to you? So here's what I mean by that. If they were RMD age and they were taking their RMDs and then hand that to you, guess what you have to do every year for those 10 years? You have to take a required minimum distribution. And that distribution might be on top of your earned income, therefore it's creating more of a taxable event for you. If they have not started taking their RMDs when they pass it on to you, you don't have to necessarily take a minimum distribution every year, but you still have to exhaust the entire account after that 10th year. A lot of moving parts.
Yes.
It's something we do not want to take this lightly, because we've talked again how this is an emotional asset. It's our legacy for mom and dad. The IRS knows there's going to be a tremendous amount of wealth transferred. Let's sit down, let's have the conversation, and let's talk about how do we efficiently transfer the dollars and then leverage the dollars that are left over for retirement income.
Yes, there's so much that goes into this, and I love that you are also committed to working with families across generations. You create that safe space to have these important conversations and help folks plan for the future.
Absolutely right. I mean, let's create some transparency, right? Even if it involves a Zoom call. If mom and dad are here in Illinois and your kids are in another state, let's get on Zoom, let's talk through this, let's plan efficiently, because you don't want the IRS to create a plan for you. You want to be in control. We'll help you create the most tax-efficient transfer of wealth.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, we hope that you have found this to be helpful and valuable. That's how it's intended each and every week. We encourage you to reach out for your complimentary written financial plan. You can do so by calling 888-992-7829. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Income is the Outcome.